Hello, and welcome back to Monmouth's EDD podcast, MU EDD in Action, led by Dr. George.
Welcome, everyone.
This episode, we'll be talking about and focusing in on personalized learning. I'm one of your hosts, Ed Bouchard, and joining me, we have Megan Akunowitz.
Hi, everybody.
Stephanie D'Alessio.
Good morning.
Amanda Mergner.
Good morning.
And Janine Arciero.
Good morning, everybody.
To lead us in a great discussion on personalized learning, we have teachers with backgrounds in general education, special education, and English as a second language. We have supervisors, building administrators, and central office administrators throughout the state of New Jersey. As educators, I think we can all agree that this has been one of the most tumultuous, inconsistent, and unprecedented years that we, or more importantly, our students have ever experienced. This school year, we were flexible, accommodating, we adapted, we improvised, and did whatever we could do to help our students learn. If it wasn't already, personalized learning has been thrusted into the spotlight as one of the trending topics in education, especially during the pandemic. With that being said, today we're going to be looking at personalized learning before COVID-19, during the pandemic itself, and what direction personalized learning is going in as we transition back to full in-person instruction in the post-COVID world. For those listening in that are unfamiliar with our topic today, let's actually open up this discussion and paint you a picture of what is personalized learning. Janine?
Thanks, Ed. So before we open the conversation up to our guest, I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss what personalized learning is. A common misconception is that personalized learning and differentiation are the same, but they are not. Although differentiation is a component of personalized learning, differentiation is about adapting the current curriculum we have in place for our students, where personalized learning is creating new curriculum for our students. This is a critical shift in education, as we know. It is based on student voice and student choice, but don't be misled. It is not about teachers not teaching anymore, or it is based on research and the best instructional practices. Students are not teaching themselves. Technology is a large proponent of this practice because it is used to enrich student learning in innovative ways and give students real-time feedback and access to performance data, which leads us to our question for discussion. Why is there a disconnect between instructional leaders' perspective on the efficacy of personalized learning, particularly through the use of digital technology, compared to the classroom teacher pre-pandemic? And will there be a discrepancy post-pandemic as well? So, hi Liz, thanks for joining us this morning. Would you like to just discuss with us some of your some of your thoughts on this issue?
Thank you, Janine. Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Giron. I am a ESL teacher at the Long Branch Middle School. And as a teacher inside the classroom, I've definitely seen how pre-COVID, there was a lot less use of technology if we think about it. We did a lot more textbooks, notebooks, pencils use. Technology wasn't really such a big forefront pre-COVID. However, with that going on, I think that principals have a more optimistic view and have a more confident view that students will be able to kind of take what they were doing in the classroom and take it into the digital world. And I also think in the sense of a teacher, that because principals are not in the classrooms full time, they're not really seeing the scope of how we have to personalize learning for our students. So for example, as an ESL teacher, it's very important for my students to interact with me to practice their English. Behind a screen, it is much harder to do that interaction because it's not a really real interaction because we don't know what's going on the student side of the screen, and we can't really build that connection. There's a lot more things such as using sounds, using in-person sounds for phonetics, the way the mouth has to be structured for certain sounds. But when I look at it, is that I look at technology is a very universal thing and a very important thing for us to use because it gives us a lot of paths for learning. However, technology itself is not personalized for the students. Technology is actually the opposite, in which the student needs to adapt to it. So I definitely see where there's a big disconnect there. And I think we need to look at how it is that the student learns best and how we can adapt technology to the learning of the student and how we can use those components of technology with what we were doing pre-pandemic to make sure that the student is successful in the classroom.
Thank you so much for those points, Liz. And you're right. So technology is not to replace our teachers, but it's to drive the instructions, to drive instruction that is teacher led. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate those comments. And Marcus, I know you have something to add as well. So please, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Right. So thanks. My name is Marcus Rodriguez, Director of DEI at Long Branch Public Schools. And in contemplating this in view of the pandemic, one of the things we need to understand is that the personalized learning, when it's not done in a manner that's consistent. In other words, if teachers aren't trained consistently across the board on how to make an approach for students, what you end up having is a disconnect or a disproportional way of using technology and the various components of personalized learning from classroom to classroom. And I think what we've learned is that training across the board is really essential. And so defining what personalized learning is, rather than leaving it to individual teachers to do on their own, it's all well and good. You know, teachers are well capable of developing their personalized learning, but I think it would be helpful, generally speaking, as a building leader, the principal, to go ahead and do professional development so that all teachers have a common framework, a common understanding of what personalized learning should look like from the administrative point of view. And that's where the disconnect sometimes lies, right? It lies in the messages, we need personalized learning, now go out and do it. And teachers are like, okay, but you know what? It might look different in my classroom than in the other classroom. And so what ends up happening is students lose. You have to really bring all the teachers together on a common understanding of what the expectation is, what the definition is, and then systematically create a plan for what that should look like in your building as a leader.
Marcus, thank you so much for those meaningful and insightful thoughts and really great advice for everybody listening. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wonderful points, Marcus. Just to build on that, really important that school administrators and school leaders give the necessary resources for teachers to be able to implement the pedagogy that we're learning or that they're implementing into a classroom. So they definitely need those resources through professional development so they can be successful in their teaching. This portion of the podcast is going to focus on personalized learning during COVID. So during COVID, school districts, teachers, districts, they were all faced with the challenge of successfully teaching students in a virtual world. The following guests will discuss how they implemented personalized learning during the pandemic from the perspective of a teacher, a school, and a district. So the first person who's going to speak is Jessica DeLissa. She is a 6th grade math teacher at Long Branch Middle School, and she's going to speak from the perspective of a teacher. So Jessica.
Hi, thank you, Stephanie, for introducing me. So I'm a 6th grade math teacher, and this year with COVID, there was a great advantage to me as a teacher in terms of personalized learning. So that advantage was that this year's half-day schedule had 2 hours of office hours built into our day as a teacher. This allowed me to offer a variety of opportunities to different types of learners. In the beginning of the year, I focused primarily on my struggling students, right? They're the most visible. I helped students who struggled waking up on time and who missed classes, who struggled to pay attention during the virtual setting. And just in general, you always have students who struggle with math skills. But by the time February rolled around, I really wanted to shift my focus on another group of students, which were my students who were excelling. So I began to split that time, even though I was very afraid to do that, to take away from the struggling learners. But I'm so thankful that I did. These students that attended this 1 hour office hour session quickly requested more time for their learning. So I added an additional hour, so 3 hours of office hours, 2 for my excelling students per their request. And those students learned 3 extra chapters outside of the classroom. They practiced NJSLA problems, and they even worked on 2 projects with spreadsheets. So something we don't even typically get to in a school year. In one project, they were able to formulate a statistical question, which I pushed out to all my classes. The students then were able to sort and manage the data. They were able to formulate a response. They were able to discuss reasoning and also just learn the process of how to ask questions and how the response type matters. They then made graphs and charts and had really a great time learning something that would not normally be allowed outside of the classroom time. They also learned how to make formulas and use formulas within a budget in a spreadsheet. So these students really drove their learning, and what that created was an opportunity to open up many new lessons and even choice assignments for them, advancing their learning at a pace much greater than the classroom pace, and also at their own pace and their own preference, passion, and interest. And so it was a really rewarding experience. And now the challenge is to take this and be able to simulate a similar type of experience outside of COVID within the structures of a normal school day that don't have built-in office hours time. So that's what I have to look forward to in the future.
Great job. Sounds like your students definitely benefited from your expertise in personalized learning. You made a very good point when you spoke about personalized learning and the importance of voice and choice, the importance of differentiating towards interest and making the class and the teaching the students not only about their interest, but also making sure that the class is student-centered and student voice and choice, as I said. So moving on now to the assistant principal of Brick Township Schools, Meredith Hudson, and she will speak from the perspective of a school administrator. Meredith.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
To piggyback off what Jess had said, when we think about personalized learning for students, we had to make this shift, and it was a very quick shift to remote or all virtual or hybrid. Our teachers needed to then have professional development that was personalized to them. So similar to what Jess had stated, and having office hours, we did something on Friday about coffee breaks. So the teachers could bring what they wanted to know, what they wanted to learn about to the coaches. And then from there, the coaches would help guide them for how they can improve the strategies within their classroom. So it's really important, I think, to think about how do we have personalized learning for our students, but then also for our staff. And it's something that we hope to continue on, as Jess had said, once we go back to normalcy in September.
That sounds awesome. I think I'm going to try the coffee breaks at the school that I lead as well. So moving from the perspective of a district superintendent, we have Mr. Pat Ranella, who's the assistant superintendent of Middletown School District. So Pat, how did you and your district implement personalized learning strategies to all of your schools and students?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. So yeah, as a assistant superintendent, I wasn't one of the boots on the ground. I wasn't in the classroom actually implementing it, but our district had fortunately spent a lot of time with professional development opportunities on personalized learning pre-pandemic. So when we had to make that immediate pivot to virtual learning, our teachers were prepared, and they did a really great job of being able to transition almost overnight from a more traditional classroom into one where they really had to implement the personalized learning. But as at the district level, we were able to hear feedback from our teachers and from a lot of parents were reaching out to us. And one recurring theme or concern that we continued to hear was at the assessment level. When we had virtual learners, the ability for students to be able to collaborate privately offline and then come back with an answer was a little bit easier than it is sitting in the classroom. So that really goes back to that personalized learning piece and allowing the students to have the opportunity to choose their own assessment. And we kind of have to meet the kids where they're at, meet the students where they're at. So give them the ability to take ownership in their learning and create their own assessments and, demonstrate their growth through the assessments that they've chosen and not necessarily the traditional paper and pencil or Google Forms or whatever they may be in the virtual world. So as a district, we really emphasized, going back and looking at our assessment practices and making sure that they're personalized to the students, and meeting them where they're needed to be met. So as everyone has said, as we move back into in-person instruction full time, we're really hopeful and excited about the opportunity of taking everything that we learned during this pandemic and this virtual learning and being able to implement it and looking for the benefits of teaching and learning in our district.
Thank you very much, Pat. You gave us some very good ideas about alternate assessments and how we can implement it into our schools. Moving on, we're going to now shift to Meg, who's going to speak about after COVID and personalized learning. Megan?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steph. Yeah, I think what we can really all agree on here is that we've revealed strengths and weaknesses, and our readiness for the shift to true digital learning was, kind of a mixed bag. Some districts were really ready for it, while other districts took a little longer to onboard. But the fact of the matter is that we're all gearing towards personalized learning in some way, shape, or form, and we are all onboarded. So now moving forward, how do we take all of these pieces and put them together? Holistic education is a great component to kind of lead this discussion in, because the whole child model is really active in all of these conversations. With me today, I have three very different panelists because they're all in different roles. And it's going to give us three different lenses to see what's going on moving forward in the elementary realm, the secondary, and also, how are we helping our students post-secondary? So the first person I'm going to introduce is a principal in the Franklin Township School District. Her name is Nicole Bevere, and she's going to help us to see what's going on in the elementary realm moving forward. Thanks, Nicole.
So thank you, Megan. Thanks for having me. I completely agree with your assessment about the need for reflecting on the effects of our students as it relates to technology and personalized learning, pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and now post-pandemic. And definitely, right, we have our successes, but we need to, as educational leaders, dig in deeper, right? We need to be super reflective. We need to ask ourselves, what's next? I love the fact that you just talked about holistic approaches to learning. I'm incredibly passionate as an elementary principal about really taking a look at the whole child. And I know for me, as I'm planning as a school leader about how am I going to best support my teachers post-pandemic in getting ready and gearing up for the 21-22 school year. What are we going to focus on as it relates to technology? What are we going to relate to as it relates to personalized learning as well? So let's start with the fact that we know what research tells us, right? Research tells us that kids learn best through meaningful instruction and interactions with caring adults and teachers. So when we've been in the pandemic, right, we've had that opportunity, but it's been sometimes and more frequently through the computer. So now we're going to be back in person, and those human interactions are going to become more real and very, very valuable. So we want to anchor ourselves in those interactions, and we want to then lasso, though, all of the things that we've done with technology and use them as a resource, recognizing that that's what they are. They're a resource. They're not a substitute in any way, shape, or form for those meaningful interactions that we want to set up for our students. So what are some dynamic ways that we can provide learning opportunities for children that integrate technology and, again, reinforce that it's a tool? So I know for me, and it's great because we use the Danielson framework in my district, and it speaks to how teachers use technology within given lessons. So I think just again in scaffolding what the year is going to look like, let's talk about using technology in a variety of ways. So we know that teachers have gained a really heightened level of security with various platforms and so forth and so on, but we want to make sure that as the children come back in, that we're not just equipping them with a device, we're equipping them with a tool. It's just not a place where they perhaps interact with a game. It's not just Raz Kids. It's not just I have to put my work in Seesaw, right? It's an actual research tool that could be utilized to provide opportunities for project-based experiences, for them to access research through the computer, to read ebooks, to take pictures, and to use all of those pieces of information to better inform their learning. I think also it's really important because we're preparing our students to be more independent, that as teachers engage with their students and technology, that they vocalize what they're doing with technology, right? They're not just putting something up and asking the students to look at it or access it, but they're really talking them through the process of what they're doing, using language and vocabulary that's associated with the actual tool. What I'm doing with the smart board right now is, what I'm utilizing within my Google Classroom is, and really guiding the students so that when they're expected to do it outside of direct support from their teacher, that they feel more confident in their abilities. And then finally, I think with regard to learning and technology, the idea of really pre-planning or thinking about ways to pose open-ended questions to students while they're interacting with the technology to allow them to think critically or to problem solve. So simple questions like, what happened when you did this? What happened when you pushed that button? Allow them to think about how the technology has either furthered their understanding or perhaps hindered their understanding, presented them with an obstacle that they need to kind of work around. So that's one area of focus for me as a principal. And then obviously social emotional learning, right? Huge, huge topic. We need to look at social emotional development and technology, right? How can technology help us support our students? So again, when we're talking, again, for me as an elementary principal, is looking at our friends and family. So sorry, my dog is crying in the background. So this is absolutely somewhat comical right now. Just gonna go with it. We're talking about the idea of utilizing the resources that we have available to us, like photographs, so forth and so on, through the technology, right? To gain an understanding of who the student is. So for example, allowing the students to either upload pictures of places that they've been or people that are important to them, and then to display or share that so that not only the adults who are working to establish relationships with them, but the students who are looking to pair and partner with them really learn who they are, what they value, and how they're feeling about those people or those experiences. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the discussion this morning. My dog Jackson also thanks you guys so much for the opportunity.
We're so happy to have him. Why, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. So yeah, totally appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that we can really bring in the whole child, especially when we talk about technology and how we're assisting our students in that way. I think that we need to see that we are assisting our students to be resilient in all of these environments. And it's a balancing act for sure, but we are balancing it. And it doesn't even stop there at the elementary level, because once we move on to the secondary environment, we have Tom with us next, and he's really going to dig into some of the learning tasks and how those assessment pieces in the secondary environment are promoting success. So Tom, thank you for joining us. Again, he's from the Monmouth County Vocational Technical School District, and he's gonna show us what's going on in a teacher lens. Thanks, Tom.
Great. Thank you very much, Megan. And I think what I've got to contribute today is really got strong connections to what Nicole previously commented on, even what Pat previously commented on early at the central office level. I think we all know that the types of learning tasks and assessments we use to engage students are critical. What we select is critical in bolstering personalized learning. And after a very difficult period of education, the role and impact of what I want to emphasize is authentic assessment in our mission, I think should be very clear. And digital tools are really wonderful in helping to highlight credible student achievement. Technology often allows teachers a deeper understanding of students' thought processes and can facilitate immediate feedback on performance, as well as immediate interventions to address gaps in understanding. Personalized learning, I think, is all about allowing the context of students' experience, their strengths and weaknesses into their work, and removing the barriers of a one-size-fits-all framework. I think that's really critical in using and relying on authentic assessment. And that's why authentic assessments are performance-based tasks, particularly at the secondary level, those that require knowledge interpretation, application, communication, problem solving, collaboration. They reflect a very wide range of skills, because a reliance on authentic assessment, I think, was really ushered in and facilitated by the circumstances of remote and hybrid instruction. That type of approach is very much here to stay now. And we've got all sorts of aligned tools such as Flipgrid and differentiable aspects of the Google Suite and platforms for curating student portfolios. I think they really should remain critical components of teachers' toolkits. These are really great strategies for promoting a healthy and, as you said, holistic pedagogy and ensuring each of our students is provided a personalized opportunity to succeed in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are a ton of really positive initiatives, and we're continuing to model them, as you can see, and they're just connecting and assisting our students. They'll definitely be more inclined to access technology and use the open learning resources if we can just provide them and keep it consistent, for sure. So last but not least, we have Lindsay Skirker, she's a guidance and career counselor at the Purnell School, which is all the way up in North Jersey. But what I love about this part of the podcast is she's going to show us what's going on post-secondary and how we're giving our students that voice and choice moving forward as they try to figure out and navigate the waters as they exit high school and move into the college realm. All right, take it away, Lindsay.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, everyone, for this conversation. So overall, I think we can pretty much agree that education and employment will look radically different in the future. COVID brought about so many opportunities to harness the power of technology, and especially the post-secondary planning process. And we've been able to just increase the personalization of this for each student. I work at a school, which is a boarding school, so students come from all over the country. Before COVID, we even had a few international students. So this really helped to increase our use of technology and just working with each student to truly personalize what post-high school looked like for them. This past year, although students could not physically visit college campuses, we did many virtual tours and webinar sessions. For students looking more for the career path, although students couldn't complete internships or job shadowing in person, they could still find ways to participate online or do, further educational work and research in a given field. Again, regarding networking and career events, in the past, we used to bring some people to campus for a career day or, just different panels. And although we couldn't bring guests to campus, we harnessed the power of video and Zoom to connect with professionals from all over the country to speak with our students. And the great thing about this, we weren't limited by travel constraints or time limits or, even costs. So that was really a fantastic, just technological advance from this state as well. Again, for people who work in a high school, it's probably pretty common that you might have college representatives visiting your campus, your building, most likely throughout the fall semester. And we couldn't welcome people in person, but we could really get so many of them, luckily, through online video calls. And again, just harnessing this power of technology. That's what I kept using this phrase with my students and families this year. We were able to increase the number of visits like tenfold, and the depth and breadth of the colleges we could welcome. Again, we hadn't ever been able to welcome. I'm a small school, so we welcomed about 50 colleges this year through Zoom visits, which for a small school, that was great. In the past, we really couldn't welcome that many. Just we didn't have enough days and time. And again, these things, we weren't limited by the time and travel constraints as in the past. And furthermore, on this point, we were even able to welcome reps from different colleges and gap year programs from not even just across the country, but a few international programs as well. We had people Zoom in with us from France, Switzerland, even Israel. So, time zones and planes and everything, thanks to technology, we could really, make it super personal for each student and what their post-secondary future might have in store for them. And furthermore, again, as I was working at a boarding school in the past, we never really were able to host much for all of our families because our students come from all over. So this year it was great. We ran, a professional webinar series where the families, again, who live all over could Zoom in. We hosted different speakers for them on financial aid, on gap year planning, on, just what the virtual process of looking for a college is like. And that was just a fantastic opportunity for our families as well. So lastly, it just seems the workforce in education is thoroughly going to be changed by our post-COVID reality as we enter into whatever this looks like going into the next school year. And I think the students of this generation will just be prepared for whatever type of work or college environment they enter next. And to bring it back to personalization, students really now have a good idea of what they prefer and what works best for them personally as learners after this year, whether that's they prefer the in-person, they prefer the virtual, they prefer the hybrid environment. And this can only help them to decide, what type of work environment they might thrive in one day, which makes me excited as their, post-secondary planning counselor. So, overall, I think this just ties back into our theme of autonomy within personalized learning in school. And that one day, the students of this generation, as they graduate out into the workforce, they're just overall, I think they'll just be better prepared for what the future holds for them. So on that note, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to join this conversation, and back to you all.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for sharing all of the ways that technology really enhanced student experiences throughout the pandemic. Something that really was intriguing to me was you mentioning how you connected your students to others throughout the world via Zoom. I think that's an awesome way to harness the power of technology and utilize technology for a specific purpose. I think that was one of the main themes throughout this podcast today, was the importance of utilizing technology, not to replace good teaching, but to, really personalize learning experiences for our students. Another theme that I heard throughout the podcast was, more specifically toward the beginning, was that training is necessary. And you might be wondering, I've heard about all of these awesome experiences from, P through 12 and even at the higher ed level, how can I learn more about personalized learning, or how can I implement it in my classroom? You might be somebody that really struggled to decipher between how personalized learning is different from differentiation. And that's, a fair way to feel. I want to bring up two books that I have read. The first is by Paul Emmerich France. It's called Reclaiming Personalized Learning, a Pedagogy for Restoring Equity and Humanity in Our Classrooms. This book really focuses on human-centered pedagogy and putting our children before the technology and utilizing technology to personalize our experiences, not just for the sake of, putting the latest and greatest buzzword technology in front of our kids. The other book that I read last summer was by Thomas Murray, who is the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools. It is called Personal and Authentic: Designing Learning Experiences That Impact a Lifetime. So those are just two avenues that you can go for learning a little bit about personalized learning. The internet is another great tool, Twitter, connecting with other educators who are implementing in the classroom. I don't think any of us here today claim to be, experts in personalized learning, but, there's always room for growth, and we are happy to, point you in the right direction moving forward. Before we head out today, I would like to highlight some of the chat because it was blowing up throughout the podcast. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Ed had mentioned students lose, powerful statement. Megan had said, absolutely, open communication is essential and needs to remain consistent. Great job, Liz and Marcus. Thank you so much. Jessica, such a great point about the need to balance our time with all students. Great to hear how motivated your students were with this flexible and choice time. Love the positive impact of personalized learning in your classroom. Would love to see you turnkey that with others. Jessica, loved hearing your perspective and how you worked with your students. This definitely brings in the theme of intrinsic motivation and the themes of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. It's very interesting to hear the different perspectives from teachers, admin, and central admin. Absolutely. I was able to see how students were motivated to continue their learning. Delissa, you make the middle school proud. I love the work you are doing. Nicole, you just hit the nail on the head. Relationships and interactions are at the core. Technology is a resource, a tool. Tom, love the idea of moving as far away as possible from the one-size-fits-all model. So true. Personalized learning from the counseling perspective is amazing. It is very true. All of the colleges and universities have shifted to provide virtual walkthroughs. I love how you were able to use technology to make new opportunities that sounds like you can use in the future. Wonderful conversation, rich with relevant information and strategies to implement into our schools, classrooms, and districts. So awesome job today, everybody. Thank you so much to our panelists who shared your experiences today. Thank you to my co-hosts, Janine, Stephanie, Megan, and Ed. And last but certainly not least, thank you to Dr. George for hosting this podcast for us. We will see you next week for episode 3 on social emotional learning.